And we're back, Stripe Show podcast. On a Monday, I'm your host, Travis Fulton. Thank you for tuning in. Hope you had a great weekend. Happy belated Father's Day to everybody out there. Had a nice Sunday myself. Played a little golf, 9 holes with my 8-year-old and 7-year-old and wife. 92 degrees, 90% humidity. How you doing? And then got back to the crib, watched the U.S. Open down the stretch, and Wyndham Clark holds on. I didn't think Wyndham would come back to the field. I knew he would stay strong. I thought someone would have to go get him. I thought it would be Rory. Watching Rory and Scheffler trying to make a putt on a Sunday was entertaining in itself. So lots to get to, lots of storylines out there in Los Angeles. Someone who's played in the U.S. Open many times over the years, and a fellow Oklahoma State Cowboy grad, Hunter Mahan. Hunter, thanks for joining the show. How you doing, bud?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Man, these Oklahoma State Cowboys are tough. I mean, you got Victor Hovland, Canadian Open, and then here comes Wyndham Clark. And I know Wyndham was only there in the first part of his collegiate career, and he transferred to Oregon. You went to Oklahoma State. You guys a pretty tight bunch. All these guys get up there. Ricky Fowler in the mix. Is that who you're pulling for? Is the Cowboys, or does it go deeper than that?
Yeah, I think watching it unfold, obviously I thought it was great that Ricky was there. I think his transformation technically from his swing and just his continued work on doing what he's doing and getting the results that he has the last about 8 months or so has been really, really impressive. Couldn't be happy for him and where his game is and where everything's going for him. Wyndham's just a great human being, kind of been through a lot in his kind of young life, losing his mom kind of when he did, and probably in such a quick kind of short fashion is jarring for a young person. I lost my mom like 18 months ago, and it's, you're going to lose your parents one day, but not as a kid, right? Not as I don't know how old he was, maybe 19 years old or something, to lose your mom. It's that's a lot. That's a lot to deal with. And so couldn't be happy for him, and how he played and the grit and that he showed was just really cool on a U.S. Open Sunday with Rory kind of breathing down your neck and knowing that he was probably playing thinking that I'm the only person that can lose this, right? The course was playing so difficult going into the back nine, having a lead. You really had to stay in the moment, because he couldn't let the mistakes that he had beforehand really get in the way.
Yeah.
And it was cool to see.
Yeah, it was. There was, Wyndham, as I mentioned, went to Oklahoma State. Then he lost his mom and to breast cancer. And I think he admitted that, he was in a tough spot. He was lost. He was trying to find some answers. He went to Oregon. He won the Pac-12 championships out there. He was a very good collegiate player, obviously. Came to professional golf. And I think what's really interesting in Wyndham now playing his best golf, keep in mind, he won the Wells Fargo just a couple months ago as well. I mean, he's won twice now in his last 4 starts, including the U.S. Open. So things have really come together. But I think what's really interesting to me in following Wyndham Clark, he's been on the podcast before. He was on last year, is that he's done this with no coach. I mean, he was a student of Boyd Summerhays before that, Jeff Smith, who spent a lot of time with him, I believe, in his college days and his early days in pro golf. Boyd, very well. You've worked with Boyd. Boyd's been on the podcast a couple times. I think Boyd is one of the best individuals ever and love his stuff. But Wyndham went on his own. And John Ellis, I know, helps him, his caddy. He's a very good player, has an eye. He knows Wyndham. There's not many guys, Hunter, in today's game, the amount of money that's out there, that are doing this kind of by themselves to some degree without a coach. But Wyndham went on his own. I think he hit the reset button a little bit for him as far as a man and the person that he wanted to be. And by God, he has found it, both on and off the course. But that doesn't happen a lot out there, does it? That you have someone doing this without a coach.
Yeah, I think he's probably learned a lot from both of those guys, Jeff Smith and Boyd, throughout the years. And, the good thing is there's so much good technology that players can be in charge of with TrackMans and
Mhm.
things. So I think my guess is, I mean, and Wyndham's a guy who's all in, right? Like he
Mhm.
lives race golf and he's going to put everything he has into it. And so I think he's probably did that going no coach with a real purpose and a sense of understanding that I need to probably figure out myself and understand what I need to do well and what is that and how is that. And it, good thing with TrackMan, it gives you a lot of numbers. And so maybe he just, I don't know if he's using TrackMan or not, but there's just a lot of good technology that you can
Mhm.
use as a player nowadays to sort of find where you want to be and where when you hit it the best, where you live. And maybe he just wants to live in a certain place, found his sort of technique cues and things that he needs to do well, and the feels and how that feels relate to
Yeah.
positions and how he can go and just play. And um, he obviously showed a lot this week and at Wells Fargo. And sometimes you just have too many people in your head and
Yeah.
in your ear, and you just need to go out there and play and sort of, as Hogan would say, just kind of dig it out of the dirt.
Well, I think the biggest improvement when you look at Wyndham Clark has probably been his iron game. I mean, his iron game has really improved. He's always been someone that, Hunter, I probably spend 5 or 6 weeks out there, do some things, and I'll, walk up and down the range. And Hunter's like, or Wyndham's one of those guys that I'll usually stop and watch because the ball it's really compressed, it's flushed off
Yeah,
the face. He's got that effortless, probably 15 yards that you're not necessarily seeing and equating in your brain. Oh wow, that went how far?
yeah,
So he,
exactly.
he he's just kind of one of those guys that can really get it out there effortlessly. Um, so he's had the length. I think he's tightened up his driver a little bit. He was positive 5.5 off the tee this week, a positive 7.3 putting, and that putter that him and Rickie are using that's kind of running up close to the belly button has made a nice difference for both of those. He was positive 7.5 at Wells Fargo too. So those are, huge numbers
Those
when
are,
you're
yeah,
gaining
massive,
massive numbers when you're
massive.
gaining that. His short game was so good too. So I think he's really, you can see growth, I think, in probably all phases of the game. Um, and I was, let me ask you this is from a coaching perspective and in Wyndham's situation, how unique it is. Is it possible that as a player, when you're out there and you're traveling around week in and week out, and you've got your caddy trying to manage your family life, you might have one coach. A lot of these guys have two coaches. A lot of these guys, maybe two coaches and a trainer, and all these things
Yeah.
that they can afford now. Can it get too comfy? Can it get too where as a player you're leaning on them or the technology too much? And then you're not maybe taking the ownership that you need as a player to go out and play instinctive and with that edge. Is that something that happens?
Well, every player has a different place they want to be when it comes to teachers and technique and a caddy and what they want to be surrounded by, right? I remember when we were working with Sean Foley and he had Justin Rose, and Justin was playing great. He'd have 4 or 5 swing thoughts on the backswing and a couple on the downswing. Like
Wow.
he wanted a lot of information, wanted a lot of technique. He wanted to be precise, right? And that's where he lived, and that's where his comfort level was. Um, and some players are just like, I want to have no thoughts. I just want to be able to swing free. Dustin Johnson looks pretty free. It's not a whole lot. There's no technique. There's no places and positions he's trying to get to, right? It's just
Mm-hmm.
a little bit more feel and like, yeah, a little bit more of this, a little bit less of that, right? And so every player has their own cues and their own recipe to get where they feel comfortable. And um, as you said, Wyndham's a great driver, hammers the ball. It's just
Mm-hmm.
like this tight kind of almost John Ramesh sort of shortness of power is just incredible
Mm-hmm.
to achieve. Um, those numbers on the putting are insane, right? Those
Yep.
aren't those are I watched him a little bit. His up and down and the way he grinded out a lot of his week last week was incredibly impressive. He made just massive and huge putts when he needed them. But like you said, he's going to have to get better at his ball striking to continue the consistency. to kind of be there week in and week out. But how he kind of gets there is going to be his. It's such a players at a young age. If I was talking to them, I'd say at a young age, you need to figure out what makes you good and what are the things you need to get better at, right? And I think it's really important to figure out what makes you good. What are the things that from just looking at it from a camera perspective, like saying this is that's your secret sauce, and then you need to always keep that and maybe refine a few other things, but keep the reasons why you're so good, and don't get rid of that just maybe because it maybe doesn't look as good or whatever. Right. Maybe this player does that and it's different from you. You really got to find your unique trait that makes you consistent and good at that skill set, right?
Yeah.
So that's the challenging part, is to figure out what that really is and to never lose that, but then reshape the other parts of your swing that are going to make you better and make you maybe more consistent.
Yeah, I think that's the art, right, of teaching, especially when you're working with players of your skill set. Is obviously you've got so many great things already. So how do you protect those things, but then maybe address a particular weakness without disrupting the DNA and the instinctual nature of that player? Like you said, what really makes you tick. When I watched Wyndham this week, and particularly on Sunday, the word that came to my mind, and I don't know Wyndham, and I know that that you've played with him, and I want to ask a specific question about this. But he's been on the pod. I've interacted with him a couple times, but I don't know Wyndham Clark. I don't know him. But the word that I saw that came to my mind was ownership. He looked like a player that was owning what he was doing, right? And I guess it goes back to what I was saying earlier. Like you can get. And I've taught a lot, and I've taught a lot of high caliber players. Sometimes players can get maybe a little too lenient and really lean too much into the technology or get too dependent on the coach. And so the ownership from the player standpoint doesn't always take hold, right? And so it's a difficult dynamic when the player isn't perhaps the president or the CEO of what they're doing. Right, taking ownership of what they're doing. And when I look at Wyndham, I literally looks like a guy that has matured a great deal on the golf course. Wyndham can run hot over the years. I know a lot of people that have been close to his camp. He can be tough on his camp, but which isn't a bad thing. But I just think when I look at Wyndham now, it looks like he's taken full ownership of what he's doing. He's in charge, and here we go. And I've got all the shots. And whatever this round brings to me, I'm going to take it in stride and I'm going to hit it head on. Whether it's a fairway wood that I'm going to hit to 15 feet from the fairway, or it's going to be a tough up and down that I've got to get out of this hay off this par 4 where he hits this beautiful little flip wedge up there to like 4 feet, whatever it brings me. Bad bounce into there, good bounce onto the green, putting for eagle. I'm in charge. Ownership, maturity, all the things that are not technical things, I think is where the greatest growth has come from Wyndham Clark. You agree with that?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. But also, I think for a lot of young players, expectations are sort of their worst enemy. Wyndham was a great college player. I think he had high expectations for himself, and I think other people did too. And when you don't reach those things, and you don't reach the places where you want to go, you don't win as much as you think you should, and you can, frustration sets in, right? And as you said, like he kind of runs hot, right? He wants to win. He wants to do this. He wants to be in the position that he's in today. And when you're not there as fast as you think you are, doubt creeps in, frustration, pushing people to do better. You're pushing yourself. And all of a sudden those things snowball in the wrong direction. And, playing on tour for as long as I did, things can go by really fast and things can get moving really quickly, and they get moving really quickly in the wrong direction. And you've never had that before. Wyndham's never played bad before. When he was in high school, when you're juniors in high school and college, you don't have a 3-year stretch where you don't play well. All of a sudden you turn professional, and you're playing against the best players in the world, not from college where it's about a 2-year, sort of gap. it's a 20-year gap, and that's big. And guys think they're, and it happens every year because everyone, it's just human nature. They think they're going to go out there and play well and win. It's just going to continue that steady growth and success. And it's hard to kind of wrap your head around what the heck is going on, and why am I not doing the things and having successes and the finishes that I had in college and amateur golf. And so it just takes some guys some time to kind of maybe recalibrate themselves and settle themselves down a little bit and sort of get back to, who am I as a player? And that's good enough. Yep. Wyndham probably went back to just saying, I am good enough, what I can do, and I just have to figure out what that is and how I can do that and how it can be better. And maybe that's just not having a teacher, and I just kind of going out and feeling it. And then while it's good, figuring out why is it good, and then just sort of keeping that recipe. And if I get off a little bit, going back to when it's good, and having the same caddy he's had for a long time probably is going to help him a ton, because he can see it. And if Wyndham trusts him to say, and if you give that caddy that the opportunity and the safety net to say things that maybe Wyndham doesn't want to hear, that's a great thing. That's a great relationship. And you saw that embrace when they won. That those two guys are really linked together, and they trust each other.
Yeah, that self-reflection can be tough. But I think Wyndham, when he kind of, went on his own, and I think this goes deeper, I think, than just playing golf. I think this is looking at yourself and saying, I need to get better here. I need to work on this. That's hard to do. And especially like you said, when you're out there and you're struggling and things are going fast, and it's your livelihood and this and that, and golf, as we know, can be so fickle, and can I get it back? And so it just seems like that, to me, is a lot of what has happened here. And obviously there's a maturity process, but I think that in the end, like, that's what's so cool about this is, is as great of a story as it is, with just the, really honoring his mom, right? And what she means to him and has, and the part that she played in his life and continues, and him looking up was just an incredible moment after he putted it out. Just incredible.
Yeah.
But now him, really continuing to grow as a person, and what that means on the golf course. That's what I saw. And it was awesome to see. I mean, I got to tell you, man, I mean, you look at the big names that are up there, Rory, Scottie, Scheffler, Rickie. To me, Wyndham looked the most in control. Wyndham looked like, I'm ready. It's my time. I'm ready. I mean, he looked like the guy that was going to win the tournament. And I said, like, I think they're going to have to go get him. Let's transfer. Let's move over to Rory for a minute. And Scottie, my God, I know you've been in those rounds where everybody in the group can't make a putt.
Yeah.
Right. It's just the worst feeling in the world, where you're like, we're putting for birdie all day long and nobody can make a putt. It's so, and it's so, Rory, man, like, I love Rory, but he's just maddening to watch play golf when you're trying to get him to win a tournament like this. I mean, he's just all around the hole, and then he hits the wedge in the bunker.
Yeah.
What'd you make of Rory?
Yeah, I think it's probably unfair as it is, because we know how hard it is to win and to win majors.
Yeah.
Rory's going to like, a quarterback who's going to look at the film and realize all the throws that he missed. And if Rory goes back and watches that, and he watches Wyndham play, what Wyndham did while he was playing, and opportunities that he had when he had them to sort of gain control of the tournament, he's going to be just sick to his stomach. Because it's unfair to say Rory should have won, or was in the driver's seat when he wasn't ever really leading. But man, there felt so many times where I felt like there were so many opportunities that were in his wheelhouse to sort of take charge and make a putt here, or stiff a wedge, or just do the things that he's obviously capable of, and not do it. And then let Wyndham be in control, meaning that he was in the lead, got an early lead on. I mean, he might have had a 3-4 shot lead at one time. I know he's up like 5 on Rickie through like 7 holes or there. Like, so he was really in control going to the back 9, knowing that the back 9 is really hard, knowing that pars are going to let me win tournaments. They're going to let me win this US Open if I just get in with even on the back 9. Rory knows he has opportunities, and it's just going to be like, you know, it's going to be frustrating. It's going to be frustrating. But he had the great answer afterwards, right? And Rory's, he's as committed to being the best player in the world as anybody, and so he knows that when he does win, when he does push past that finish line, it's going to feel so much better. And it just shows you, how hard it is to win, and to win majors like that. It's just so much has to go right for you.
Yep.
And it just didn't quite go right. He played well enough to win. He had great lag putting. It was a hard setup. It was hard to hit it close to the hole. But the opportunities that he kind of squandered when he could have really put pressure on Wyndham.
Yeah.
Wyndham wasn't under really much pressure from anybody other than himself.
Yeah, and nobody was running up at him.
No, they weren't.
Yeah, no one was running up, and they couldn't. I mean, they couldn't get the ball really, that close. It was hard.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this with Scottie. I mean, Scottie is the best ball striker in the world. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah, by a good margin right now. So.
It's insane from tee to green. Here's his last 4 starts. Let's go last 5 starts: 5th, 2nd, 3rd, 2nd. Strokes gained tee to green numbers are absurd. His putting is almost equally absurd the other way. Although he was positive 1.2 this week, so it was a little bit better. When as a player, because Scottie's been struggling with putting, we know that. When as a player do you know it's time to do something different? Like what I was doing, it's not working anymore, and my God, I'm putting horrific. And it's not like just kind of bad. It's pretty bad. I mean, like Scottie's putting bad for his level of play, right? Let's put it in context. When do you know as a player, man, I gotta mix, I gotta do something different here?
Yeah, he's kind of missing some short putts, right? It seems like putts you think he would make, missing 10, 12 footers happens, right? It's sometimes just right with the green. It's cyclical. It totally depends on the player and how they actually really operate. I don't think Scottie doesn't seem to be like someone who's going to change very much.
Right.
I think you probably go. I know he was working with. They should have, with Randy Smith on, getting some numbers on the putting and what's the ball really doing, and are we starting it online? Is it rolling as well as we need to? Certain just little things like that. That's kind of where you start. You don't need to make big adjustments.
Yeah.
Only he can tell you how he feels over the putter and how it looks. It's just. It can be something so finite, so tiny that it's just not. It's not worth the change, right? And I don't think he's even close to making a change because it's not. He knows he's so close to winning from just being an average putter, but we don't want to. You got to recognize that putting is not like ball striking. Ball striking, I think, really travels. It travels anywhere around the world, from how he does it, from driver to the all the way down to his wedges and everything. He has a great short game. He has incredible touch, right? So you can be frustrated. Randy would tell me, he's my teacher, he would say, you can give yourself little jabs to the face, right? A little frustration, little jabs, but you never give yourself a big uppercut. And so that's where he is right now. He can be a little frustrated. But there's no reason to go too far. It's just they're not even close to there yet, right? As long as he's comfortable with everything, if he feels like he's starting on a line and hitting good putts and the ball's rolling, get some numbers, figure out where you are there. Are you starting the ball on line, which is usually the most important thing? And, maybe try to put something else in your hands, but nothing that is going to reinvent the wheel, right? Maybe maybe take the line off a putter, right? Or go to a dot, just something visual to see differently. But he's too good to make any big adjustments, right?
All right. Well, Travelers Championship coming up. Let's do a couple more topics here on the U.S. Open. Travelers is a elevated event. So they're all up there. They're all cruising up there. All right. So we got another big time tournament to talk about tomorrow with our boy Keith Stewart. All right. So let's talk about the U.S. Open as a whole. USGA. Let's just forget the fact that they set the tee times. We're going to just skip over the fact that they set the tee times to finish in the dark. I mean, that's I mean, how does that even happen? Is beyond me. Yeah. I'll tell you how it hit for me, and then I'll let you react to it. All right. So I think LACC. I've got a couple of members that are guys that used to live over there. Have played it many times, and so I had some conversations with him. But this is how it kind of, as I watched the entire U.S. Open, United States Open, right? Our Open Championship. So LACC, it seems like a good course, but not great. It seemed like a course that would be a blast to play the member guest on, but just not the U.S. Open. It seemed like a place where, like a lot of these places, there's a lot of rules. Members wanted to control who's invited via the tickets, purchasing those rather than just open it up to everybody to come in and see our beautiful place. So you add it all up. And to me, the course played pretty generous off the tee, rough for the most part, pretty playable. I mean, there were some times they had to wedge it out, but for the most part, they could advance it. Green speeds lacking that U.S. Open fire. You had a pair of 62s, a 63, and the crowd felt corporate and lacked energy 90% of the time. That's how it landed for me.
Yeah, I thought, starting with the golf course, I thought it a little bit of overreaction Thursday, where there were some low scores, and I totally understand that. But ended up at 10 under, ended up being extremely exciting. And there was what Tommy Fleetwood shoot 63 on Sunday. So really good rounds are still possible, which I always, as long as there's a possibility of a really good round and there are opportunities, you can make a course hard. I thought there was a pretty decent balance of hard and challenging, and hey, we're going to give you some chances here. We're going to give you some easy kind of layups if you hit, a couple good shots, right? And there was, and guys took advantage. Listening to, from the USGA perspective, accessibility to golf, right? They really want to push and grow the game. It's a weird message to send when you have LACC, a really private club that is limiting tickets, limiting availability, limiting accessibility, while you're trying to make the game more accessible. It was kind of a conflicting messages, right? Because I know the USGA, some guys there, they want to push the game and they really want to grow it in to all areas and to people who don't have accessibility. So, and they do these tournaments, they do pick the course far in advance. So it was a strange message, conflicting messaging there. But clearly they wanted LACC. I think it's one of those courses, it's like a movie that gets a lot of hype and then you see it and it felt dud. It felt almost worse than maybe what it actually was, right? I think there was a ton of hype about LACC and how amazing it is. And it's the coolest golf course. And it's got that, nobody really knows about it. And there's only X amount of members. And then you saw it and I thought it looked really good, but man, the players were like, yeah, it's okay. It's not a U.S. Open course, but it's fine.
It's good.
I thought it wasn't, I'm sure the members weren't too thrilled of hearing that and players making that public the way they did. And they didn't and the players didn't like the vibe that it created, for being in LA, and which is so cool. I love that I was on the West Coast. I love that it was sort of in prime time. It was awesome. Yep. I thought at the end of the day, there was a lot of stuff, but on Sunday afternoon, it was fantastic and it was great theater and I really, really enjoyed it, but it definitely didn't quite feel, did it feel like a major? Did it have intensity and the roars and the people?
Yeah. Didn't feel big.
It didn't feel big. It felt lacking in a way, which is kind of unfortunate for the stars they had on the top of the leaderboard, to sort of missing the vibe and the energy.
Felt corporate. Is what it felt like to me.
Yeah, and that doesn't fit. And like I said, that's a conflicting message from what the USGA is trying to promote. Accessibility game of golf, and then you make the event. And this is this is business with working with the club, right? It was like, we want you, we really, really want you. What's it going to cost? And they just said, okay, that's fine,
right?
It's going to cost you a bunch of tickets, and it's going to be a corporate event, and we're going to control. And the USGA clearly just didn't have much control over who got to go.
I mean, there's a lot of holes out there that. You couldn't stand in a spot from my perspective. And I knew a few people out there and was talking with them. you couldn't stand in a spot and actually see two different shots.
Right.
There's only like there's like one or two places maybe where you're like, oh yeah, there's 11T. There's, you know, that kind of thing. Where you think about TPC Sawgrass and all these others. I mean, you could stand there and see 3 or 4 different multiple things happening. In the way that those courses and those venues are set up for spectating. Now, in defense, LACC is not, when it was designed, is not set up for that, right? It's a high-end members course, private, big numbers to get in, and that's fine. Like that's great. But is that the tone and the messaging that you want out if you're a USGA and you want to run a US Open there? And I don't know. I just, to me, the answer is no, but maybe it is. You know, and it's like, okay, yeah, we're going to have it here. Here's the tickets, but we're going to control the tickets and we're going to invite the people that we want to invite, not open it up to the public and the masses of LA to come in here, in the country to come in here and really be a part of something that's bigger than LACC, and that is the United States Open, right? That's bigger, the identity of the US Open, and that's where, to me, it just lacks. We've, you know, the USG, I think, has taken some good steps in the past to kind of get it back, but then, to me, this year, step in the wrong direction as far as the identity, at least in my mind, in what I grew up with, Hunter, and what the United States Open meant. I mean, I can remember turning the TV on. I posted a picture of Corey Pavin's forward, and Hunter, it is 20 deep, 25 deep. I mean, not as far as you can see.
Yeah.
Up the side, and NBC's music. I mean, it's giving me goosebumps right now. Like, the United States Open was big, and it doesn't feel big anymore. Doesn't feel big, you know. And it sucks because the U.S. Open should be right there with Augusta in my mind. And how does the Canadian Open the week before have more damn energy coming through the TV than the United States Open? Like, give me a break.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it was incredible watching Nick Taylor do what he did in Canada,
and they're going berserk and loving
it.
Yeah.
They're going berserk, and like you said, what's conflicting messaging from the United States, from the USGA, and then this is the most open event, but it's at the most private club, like in America, and they control ticket sales, and we're just selling out to corporate sponsors. So I don't know what their strategy is. I don't know if that's what it is going forward. I don't know if that's a model that they're going to use more of. I have no idea. I don't know. I know nothing really about it. I just don't. But I don't think it is. I think they just paid a heavy price to have the event there. They really clearly, somebody along the line wanted it there. And I guess maybe the idea was floated years ago, and they just said, we're just going to make it happen. I love it on the West Coast. I love that it was prime time. They whiffed on the tee time. The guys are finishing in the dark. That's an embarrassing. I mean, it's really embarrassing. I don't know how to say it.
How does that even happen?
Really sad. I don't know.
I'd have been pissed if I was Wyndham. If I was Wyndham and Rickie,
and he was mad, and he was.
Oh,
and
they should be.
And they should be furious. Really, there's really no other word for it. And so
you're leading the U.S. Open and have to finish in the dark
because you're not coming back in the morning. I'm like, listen, I'm not going to come back. At what time do you want me to come back to hit a putt? Right, hit a couple putts. It's ridiculous. So they whiffed, and that's when you're trying to make TV happy, or you're trying to make yourself happy and see create an image, but that's not what this is. This is about the players, not about you.
Let me ask you this finally, last question with the U.S. Open. When you watch golf on TV, do you think, because if there's I don't think there's a bigger punching bag in Twitter than the TV commentary and people taking shots at what they're watching, right? Whether it's the commercial load, or it's what he said or she said or that happened, whatever the case. It's the biggest punching bag in Twitter. And so let me ask you this, as a player who's been inside the ropes and has played for years and years professional golf, won 6 times, you've done it all. And now you take a step back and you're watching the sport on the other side, and you're watching it from your TV with your family. Does it do justice for you as a fan and explaining what is actually happening inside the ropes and what it means to walk up the fairway and hit that shot, assess that lie, this and that. You've done all those things. Now you're on the other side as a fan, like, wait, what? What in the hell did he just say? I mean, does that happen a lot for you, or do you feel like it's coming across pretty good?
Yeah, there's clearly a lot of, like you said, it's low hanging fruit to just bang on the telecast, and it's every telecast, really. I mean,
Yeah, it's
you know,
everything.
I like the no land and love guys, but it's relentless. They are relentless on just
Yeah.
banging and banging it on it, and it's sort of like, this is a business too. This is
Mhm.
entertainment. This isn't
Yep.
for you, or you just want to see every shot. I want to see as much golf as we can. Um, I don't know how we add to that. I don't know how we can have a little different perspective at times. Yeah, I don't. Sometimes it's when I'm watching it, I can see it. So sometimes I don't need to see a great shot and then sort of explain to me that it was a great shot. It's like, I know it was
Yeah,
a great shot. I just
that was
watched
a
it.
good swing.
Yeah, it's like, well, yeah, I get it. But
Yep.
where are the layers to what's happening? When I watch it and I'm thinking to myself what a guy is thinking or the
Mhm.
situation that's happening, and we don't get that, right? It's just
Mhm.
sort of like, we're just getting, this is a good swing. This is,
Yeah.
that was a good shot there. And, it's just not enough in-depth sort of stuff to it. It's like they're talking about, oh, this is going right, and I hope it hangs there. And it's like, well, I can see that
Mhm.
too. Why are you telling me? This isn't radio.
Mhm.
So I do wish there was a little bit deeper thought. I wish there was a little better sort of camera angles. I thought that golf course had a lot of really cool landscape perspective that we
Mm.
could have seen and we didn't see, and give you a better perspective of what the players were seeing. We didn't get to see really any of that. It's just very kind of, right in front of you.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, watching it is, there's a lot more going on there that is, they're capable of showing that it doesn't feel like they show. They don't dig in very hard on it, which is sort of disappointing, from sitting here and just watching it.
Well, nothing is more casual than when they do the 30-second analysis of a swing. Yep, there's he's turning his hips and, and off it goes. Wow.
Yeah.
Like there's no analysis in the in-depth aspect of the craft, right? Of maybe
Right.
what he's working on and why and the journey and those kinds of things.
Yes.
They've kind of completely done away with that. But, I think from on the course and playing in the moment, you talk about some of the low-hanging fruit with Azinger's commentary when the ball's rolling down the green. He's like, oh no, it's gonna stop there, and it keeps rolling. Now I should probably stop, and it keeps rolling. And it's like, what is this guy watching? I mean, it's that was the one that was funny on Twitter. But yeah, I agree. It's easy to do, but there's so much I think there that color guy, that Paul, that chair that he sits in.
Yeah.
I think Mark Immelman does a really good job. I think with Paul, I think to me he struggles a little bit when it comes to articulating the in-depth nature of what that player and caddy are facing at that moment, and the decision-making process of why we would go here and not there. And that happens over and over and over and over again. And we just don't quite, it just doesn't, come across and hit you as, oh, wow, that was really interesting what he just said there.
Yeah, that's why, people loved and disliked Johnny Miller, but they had an opinion on him.
He taught you.
And
Yeah, he
yeah,
taught you.
he would talk. Yeah,
Yeah.
and there was a little bit of lesson in there.
Yeah.
He went overboard on the choking thing, which is fine,
Yeah.
but that's a part of it too. But you do have to put yourself out there if you're going to announce,
Right.
and you don't want to. There is always a delicate balance of, you don't want to put guys down, but you do want to talk about a situation like Rory, middle of the fairway. This is the moment, right? Like, we're all watching and going, this is it. This is Rory's
Mhm.
going to got to be
Right.
aggressive. He has to make birdie. He can't count on Wyndham to make bogey at this point. This is in your control, and this is in your hands. You got to take advantage. And he hit a terrible shot on 18. They kind of, it was like, it was awful. I mean,
Yeah.
it was really a really bad shot.
It was the
You just,
pole that's been plaguing him with a short to mid iron for the last couple years now. And that's the shot he hit, and
yeah,
Rory
and
went down with the shot that he's been struggling with.
Yeah, it seems like, I loved his, going on a different tangent. But watching, like, I just don't get enough from it. It's just a little bit too,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
it's going right and it's hanging in there, it's
Yeah.
fine. And it's, and they're like, what is he thinking? Like, what is, you know, Paul's a major winner. We're like, what is Wyndham Clark thinking on 18?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what do you mean what he's thinking? This is your job to explain to me what he's thinking or what he might be thinking, because we're all thinking the same thing, which is like, I need one more. This is it. I need one more shot on this green, and I'm going to win the US Open. That's what he's thinking.
Take
That's
us there.
exactly what I mean.
That's right.
Paul's done this. He's
Yeah.
won it. He's been in big moments, man. He's been in huge moments, and he's come through, and he's given me nothing. And I don't know why, because I think because being him when he was a Ryder Cup captain, man, he was fantastic with his words. He understood the players. He, I think some guys are just, you have to ride that line between critical and complimentary, right? All the time. And it's just hard. It's not an easy gig first of all, but you can't be afraid to kind of mess up and put yourself out there.
Yeah, TV is interesting. I mean, I did it at Golf Channel we did live television, not commentating golf. Every TV is a little different.
Yep.
And I can only talk to my experiences and the conversations that I've had with people, and that are doing the same thing. And my take on Paul is that, like, in the room as a captain, that's his sanctuary. Like, he's in the locker room with players, and he's comfortable. He's comfortable looking at Hunter saying, "Hey, man, this is what's going to go down. We're ready." And you're like, "Yeah, I'm right. We're ready." And like, he can be a leader there. When you're sitting there and you're doing TV or whatever it is, like, and that moment hits and it's your turn, like, it's different. Are you fully comfortable? Have you done all of the research? And to really put it out there in that way, and from that seat, sitting in the 18 tower, not in the locker room with you guys. So it's a different kind of take. And sometimes I can remember when I was doing it with Morning Drive, and like, there's times where, like, it's your turn to talk and you feel like it's almost like a bubble around you. And you're like, it's almost like you are kind of freezing up a little bit, because it's your moment. Right. And this is, I'm not comparing the level of magnitude from what I'm doing there versus Corey. I'm just saying, in live television, like, those things are going through your head. And so some are very comfortable with it. They get better at it as they go. And some kind of, I don't know, I think they kind of shy away and they tiptoe in just a little bit. Who doesn't tiptoe is Dan Hicks. He's great. I mean, he's in charge. He's driving the car. He's like, let's go, guys. Damon Hack, down there in the interview. I mean, that guy I've worked with Damon for years. I mean, he just so damn good, taking it, controlling the interview, getting emotion, and then throwing it back, like, just so solid. And as a professional, and then there's others that I think kind of struggle with it. And that's just the reality of it. But I think that color guy, I think there's more there, man. There's so much more there.
Oh yeah.
So much more there.
What I've done, worked with XM, which was a lot of fun at the PGA doing it. What's always hard is Sunday wasn't as kind of, it was kind of nice because there's only a few guys, is when you're jumping back and forth between players, and maybe you do have a point, but you can't quite get to it. And you do want to get into something for, 90 seconds. You don't have the time. Right. But the Sunday was so great, was that there was only a few guys who were really watching. Yeah. The situation was sort of laying itself out there, and there was a little bit more time, I felt, for in-depth analysis of what is happening, what could happen, what's Rory thinking right now, what should he be thinking, there's just it really was laid out there to be really special. And to have a major winner kind of talk about what's going on from a completely non-course perspective, because we're all watching it and witnessing it. But what's really going on in these guys' heads? It definitely felt like a missed opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, if I was sitting there and I'm watching Rory, I'm like, okay, as a Rory fan, I'm frustrated because he's playing tee to green, hitting so many great shots. He's hitting his driver 380 yards down the middle of the fairway.
It wasn't curving, by the way. I mean, the ball was on a string.
It's insane, right? And so you're falling in love with this. You're excited. He's putting for birdie all day. He's leading the field in greens and regulation, and he can't make a putt. And then in a critical moment, what does he do? He mishits another wedge, which is what he's been doing. That's his wedge game has not been good, has not been consistent. And then he pulls up to the 18th and he hits another pole. And that's his deal. Like, that's what has been happening. And it showed up again on Sunday. And therefore, as a fan, I understand why you're frustrated. Like, because that's it, right? As a fan, like, damn it, Rory. Like,
Yeah.
It's just, there's so much good there, and you love the guy, and you're falling in love with his game, and then he hits another pole, and he can't make a putt, and God bless. All right, actually, I got to ask you one more question. I'm sorry, I just reviewed my notes. All right, and so, all right, Max Homa is hitting balls on Saturday, warming up. He missed the cut on Saturday. He's warming up at LACC. How often does that happen? Someone misses a cut and shows up on Saturday and practices?
Well, he was probably taking the charter Sunday night to Travelers, right? And so he was just probably there. I don't think his wife was there. I'm guessing they went home or something. And he was just kind of there for another 2 days and was like, well, let's go hit balls. So I wasn't real, he probably wasn't real happy with how he played and frustrated. Yeah. And it's sort of a, definitely kind of a walk of shame for a player to miss the cut and go back on the range on a Saturday. It's a little bit way to kind of punish yourself a little bit. I think we've all done it. I know I've done it.
Yeah. So you've done that before?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Because you get that. I did it like in Chambers Bay because we were.
Okay. So what happened?
You get the charter on Sunday and then you go.
I see.
And so it's just an easy thing to do and kind of just say like, hey, it's life, and it's kind of nice to humble yourself just a little bit and get back to work.
Take a few jabs from the guys, like, hey, what the hell you doing?
Well,
what
nobody,
what time's your tea time?
Yeah, exactly. It's more from the fans, right? The players are like, whatever. Players get it, they know how hard it is. But it's like the players are like, the fans are like, good luck today. And it's like, no, I sucked for 2 days, so my luck is gone. I don't need it. Give it to somebody else.
Dude, what is going to happen with this PGA Tour Live? What in the hell is going to happen? Do you have any insider information on players? Like, this is what's going to happen. I mean, unbelievable.
I think, well, no one knows anything. And I think that's the frustrating part. And I think the lack of communication and the, I don't know how, I don't think Greg is going to, survive Live. I don't see Live continuing its trajectory because it's not really doing anything, right? It's sort of there, but it's not producing, any good numbers, and there's no real juice to it. And the lack of communication, the lack of business sense and instinct that Jay has shown, it's like, well, he's got to go too. Like, it's, how do you continue to keep working with someone who the trust would be gone?
Yeah.
And the lack of say in, your career and your path as a player is, do you have any? If I'm a player, I'm like, I need representation at the table if we're doing this and how this is going to go. I know everyone's talking about they're on the PGA Tour side, but who's on the player side? Who's on the PGA player side here? I know that like there's so much has been talked about, like, well, they're going to get compensated and this, like, but who turned down like, that's such an open blank statement that doesn't make any sense, right? Mm-hmm. Like, because Rory's like, I was never offered a penny. But then he's also saying, well, we need to get compensated. It's like, but you weren't offered anything. So how could you get compensated for nothing you didn't want and turn down, but you want to use it now for your benefit? It doesn't make any sense.
Right.
So I don't, the one thing, if I'm the players, I'm like, well, if this is going to be a for-profit organization now, and this is going to be a different entity, well, then we need to probably unionize, and we need to have someone that we are going to hire to represent us, because I don't know how we can continue with just the PGA Tour doing what's best for the PGA Tour and not really having much of a say what they say to us and to the public and how things move forward. It's just not right. I've always been on the player side in this deal, and I will continue to be. And this is a problem. And it's not right how it's being handled.
Yeah, it's not. And there's so much, obviously the players didn't know. I think would be interesting. I find myself thinking about this, is how much, just from a management, just even internal, like how much did Jay know? Like, was he out in front with this, or was this something that came from the board of the PGA Tour? That's something I kind of think about. Was Jay a part of this, or was he not? And how much did he know? And how much is he in a position of, he doesn't look great. I don't know. I'm not defending him. I just think about all of these different scenarios that could be happening, because obviously it's a situation that caught everybody by surprise, and there is a PGA Tour board,
Well,
right, of people.
It shows you the lack of leadership, right? When you have boards and there's maybe not a person really in charge, that's kind of where the problem lies, right?
Mhm.
Like, who's really making the decisions? And if you're a player and you're like, okay, there's a board on
Yeah.
top of the PGA Tour player policy board, and they okayed these elevated events, but all of a sudden the elevated events are now putting too much pressure on the sponsors and there's just no money. Who's making that decision? And
Yeah.
why did we make that? Like, it just, like you keep pulling these threads, and
There's
it
no
gets worse
transparency at all.
and worse and worse.
Yeah.
And then you get to the point where, well, who's in charge?
Yeah, right.
And why is that person not making the decisions? And why are they not thinking, why didn't Jay ever take a call with the PAF when they were, when it was being like, that was, it's one thing to not take a call, to not sit down, to not establish some sort of sense of communication. You could have done that very, very quietly. You didn't need to make anything really public at that time, years ago. But there's just, to me, it's just who's in charge. And when you get a board and when there's a group of people in charge, that just makes me so nervous. And I feel like all the great institutions and all the great, smartest people that I know that are incredible business people, they are in charge, and everyone goes up to them to figure out what they're going to do.
Yep.
I've got a guy in mind that I think would be great to run the PGA Tour, but I don't. We'll see how things go down.
Yeah.
But my gosh, what a mess! Just truly, just what a mess.
It is. Yeah, it's a complete mess, and we could probably talk for another hour trying to
it keeps going. When you think about it, you keep unwinding and winding, and you're like, this thread will never stop.
I think it's going to keep going. I think there's another surprise or two.
Well, they announced they announced something that we don't know because they don't know.
Yeah,
the reality is they don't know, and
no, they don't. They just know, like, there's going to be an agreement. We think what that looks like.
You don't
details of that. No clue.
They know so little about the construction of this deal and this commercial entity that's going to exist. That's PIF is in charge of, but now Rory's saying, no, we're in charge. It's like, well, whoever is giving the money is in charge. It's not, it doesn't make any sense to say that the PGA Tour is getting all this money and they're in charge of it, but it's actually not their money. It's coming. It doesn't make any sense. There's just no transparency in what's happening. So that's really unfortunate.
Meanwhile, they move on. The PGA Tour at the Travelers, LIVs at Valderrama, I think, something like that. I think that's where they're playing this week.
I have no idea.
Yeah. Well, anyway,
that's another.
Greg
problem.
Norman said that the league is continuing on. So wherever they play next is where they play. The PGA Tour continues with the Travelers, and then we got one more major championship. That's the Open in July. Hunter, thank you, man, for coming on. I really appreciate it. Great insight. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Travis.